I'll be coming up. Everybody know the drop when I'm in it. Drop the top when I'm in it. Everybody drop when I'm in it. Yeah, I go so slow. Everybody know I'm on. You roll when the click through. Try to send this back to be a I'll be coming up hot for a minute. Everybody know the drop when I'm in it. Drop the top when I'm in it. Everybody know the drop when I'm in it. Yeah, I go so slow. Everybody know I'm on. You know when the click through. Try to send this box to be a slow beat run. I'll be coming up hot for a minute.
embarrassing. Sorry about that, Jake. How's everybody doing? Welcome aboard the Soul Train for the next, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. Myself and my team of cohorts, who I call so lovingly, are going to be hosting our favorite show, Thirsty Thursday. Dum, 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 dum. And so just to kind of kick this off, we have an extra special guest. So, we like to talk about some complex topics from time to time, but we also thought it would be interesting to talk about some not so complex topics and cover what we are going to lovingly deem just the basics, right? Because I'll kind of tell you a little bit of inspiration for this, and it even cycles back into today, right? I've talked to people from all across the United States at different forms of fashions, even lawn care professionals sometimes. And a lot of times we get so caught up in what is trendy, or we get so caught up in what is a meme, or whatever the case may be, that oftentimes we overlook the basics. And so it's important from time to time to go back and take that bit of a refresher and analyze things from a different point of view. Because once you kind of move on a little further in your lawn care career or journey, and then you go back and you revisit the basics, you pick up things that you weren't necessarily open to or aware of, or that you didn't really comprehend all that well. So anyway, that's a lot of talking. Our special guest today is going to be Nick, also known as GreekGeek on the Lawn Care Life. And with me, we have our... how's it going, Nick? How are you, good sir?
Good. I'm doing good. Thank you.
All right, excellent. We've been hanging out in the show before the show, and if you're wondering what the show before the show is, you can go to twitch.tv/The Grass Factor, and about 7 o'clock we come on there and talk. But our extra special group of leaders here we're going to start with Mr. DeMay up here at the top right. Ryan, how are you, good sir? Tell us who you are, what you do, and why in the hell are you on my feed?
Well, I don't know. I don't know why I'm here. Well, okay, yeah. I'm here, one, to support this movement here. So, if you're into that kind of thing, take a look, take a listen. So what do? I am an owner of a consulting company that specializes in very high, ultra high-end turf, including sports fields, private estates, things of that nature. And so I've been in golf prior to this. So I was in golf for 16 years before this, and so worked my way all the way up to a superintendent at a nice private course here in the Midwest. And so I've seen a lot of things. I've killed a lot of grass, and in doing so, I've learned a heck of a lot. And as you said and so eloquently put, getting back to the basics is something that I think we all should intend to do and endeavor to do here more frequently. Now, the only thing that I do have a gripe about tonight is that this might be one of the few times I've ever seen Matt Martin not wearing a button down, in which case you gotta get me a V-neck or something, dog. Because you gotta trim that up.
Can I pull it down? Look, this is old school here. This is a bow-nosed turf T-shirt, and anybody that's viewing right now that doesn't know the story of bow-nosed turf, let me tell this. So now I used to host this radio show, right? And there was a day, and there's a bit of a prerequisite to talk about why this whole thing got started, but there was a day I woke up and I had been called by the legal team of a company called Site One Landscape Supply, right? And basically, this guy told me that he had so much money at his disposal, he could spend me either out of business or into jail or whatever idle threats that he was making. And that, he reassured me that he promised they are pro small business. However, I needed to change everything I did as a small business to suit them as a big business, right? Anyway, I was pretty hot about that. And so when I got onto the radio, I started playing, it was Rage Against the Machine. I don't even remember which song it was, but I was playing Rage Against the Machine. Someone wrote to my radio boss and said, Matt is a drunken buffoon on the air, and I am a potential advertiser, and I would never advertise on your station as long as you have such an idiot anti-police buffoon on the air. Something along the lines of that. He's a drunk idiot. Well, unfortunately, the guy used his real name and his email and contact information, and I knew the guy. I knew the guy personally, and so anyway, since he threw shade at me, I thought it would only be fair to return the favor. And so I put the guy on absolute blast in the most public way I could, in the most immature way I could. And I felt really good about it, and I slept great at night. And to commemorate that, I started a new segment on the show called Bo Knows Turf, and because the guy didn't really know turf all that well, and so we would play this kind of like clown circus show music, and I would go Bo Knows Turf, and then I would tell some random old wives' tale about the industry. And to even take it one step further, because that's not humiliating enough, I went ahead and I made T-shirts. And so I made a series of Bono shirts, T-shirts, and used a vegetable clown and of course the Bo Knows Turf. And boy, that was a lot of fun. So anyway, that's the history there. That's why I'm wearing a Bo Knows Turf T-shirt. It's dirty right now because I've got stains from work on it, but you know, it was a good time. Ray, why are you on my damn feed?
I'm on your damn feed because number one, I've been in the turfgrass industry for literally 30 years, and I've also killed some grass, but most of the time I'm involved in maintaining what's considered fine turf. Nothing I take care of, with the exception of, say, a couple of St. Augustine lawns, is kept at a height above 3/4 of an inch. And it's true, I even have turf that I am in charge of that goes all the way down to 1/10 of an inch, 0.1 inches. So, and one more little thing to throw out there. Many of you know that Matt stalked me in the past. So, in order for him to quit stalking me, I just agreed to come on the show, and that way he has open access, no creepiness or stalking required.
Listen, Ray, that was a good time in my life. That was me trying to find my way in the world post collegiate catastrophe of a career there. So thank you. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for being on the air. Much appreciate it. And our guest of honor today is Mr. Greek Geek himself, Nick. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? Where are you at? Tell us about your lawn journey. Are you on social media or any of that fun stuff? Let's get to know you, the human being, before we dissect and destroy your lawn.
I work in IT field for an insurance company. The last place I was at, I was a systems architect, but I mainly focus on data systems, database stuff. So
some real nerd stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Not grass. I've got a 10 grand lawn. It seems to be getting smaller and smaller as time goes by, but I'd like to get the grass to spread out more, but I seem to be losing some of it. Right now it's about 8,000 square feet of like maintainable grass. So, the lawn was put down the sod was put down like 6 years ago. I grew up with my grandfather. He's a superintendent. I spent a lot of time on golf courses with him. I guess that's why I put the time into the lawn so far. And he was living with me for a while, and he definitely grew in the sod. The first 2 years it was down, it grew great. Cut it real short, top dressed it a lot. He definitely made all the decisions as far as what to apply and when, and I didn't really pay that much attention. I'm kind of regretting that now. He still comes over, but he's older. He's in a lot worse health than he was, so he can't really do much physically, and even mentally, he's not as sharp as he used to be, for sure. So I've kind of taken more of an interest into learning more about how to manage the grass myself than I ever have before. So,
well, thank you Thank you for joining us and stepping out on a limb. I know I would say for a lot of people that our primary viewership typically revolves around people that are pretty far into their lawn care career or their lawn care journey, and so it's always fun for me to come back to someone who's relatively green to it, right? Who has enough experience to become wildly interested in it, and but doesn't really know exactly where to start. And unfortunately, if you don't know where to start, tuning in to us for the first time is probably a bit like smashing your face into your keyboard. So this is a great opportunity for all of us to kind of step back, slow down, and come back to the fundamentals of agronomy, you know, kind of agronomy 101, right? And turfgrass 101 and lawn care 101, and what it means to be able to apply that to individual situations, especially like you said. So a little bit about what I know of you is you are in the Southeast, and I believe in the South Carolina area. So for those of you that are in here from the South Carolina area, this is someone that you can definitely relate to. And not to say that everything that's going to apply to him is going to apply to you, but it at least could give you a starting point of sorts on how to tackle things. So with that all kind of out of the way, let's kind of jump into this here and get going where we're going. J Paint, if we could start with a soil test and kind of take a look at things and wrap our brain around what's going on. Oh, this is okay. Here we go. This is not what I would consider a typical South Carolina soil test. Look at
we
this.
Changed the dirt before we put the sod down a lot.
Did you really?
So basically, we took out like 12 inches and put a bunch of drainage tile in it like we would a green when we built greens on the golf course, and then backfilled it. Now this is one thing. Sometimes me and my grandfather like be at odds on stuff, but now I kind of have to go with him. He definitely has a lot more experience than I do. On the golf course, we used like gravel in the drainage channels, and then sand in the greens, like a good say 6 to 12 inches on top. But in our yard, we didn't use sand. We used like a much more organic. It's like half chicken poop. It's like black dirt. Came from like a local supplier. It's totally different than what we use on the golf course. My grandfather felt like it would be better for the grass long term, so that's what we threw down there. Is like good 4 to 6 inches of this really rich black poop dirt. And then we top dressed a good bit on top of that. So there's some good bit of sand in there too at this point. And a lot of drainage style. Oh, that was the other thing. Instead of using the slotted drainage style like we used in greens in the past, my grandfather was really big on it's like a product called Easy Flow. It's like it's a drainage style slotted pipe, but it's wrapped in a sock with peanuts. So it meant that we didn't have to use the gravel, I guess. So we did that here, whereas we did that on any of the courses we worked on. That was a lot different for me. But we did run that kind of all over the place here, underneath the sod, or before the dirt on top of underneath the sod. So that stuff is different than the other yards in the neighborhood and stuff in most residences.
Where do all those drains fall to? Then Nick, is there like an outfall? Do they dump to the street or some like a dry well or something, or what?
So there's a large dry well, and there's in some of the pictures too. There was a large dry well. Actually, I've got it opened up right there in that picture. The dry well is actually about 8 feet deep, and that's another NDS product. It's like NDS flow well, and you like stack them on top of each other. Originally, because that was the low point in the yard, and when we first moved in here, before we regraded anything, before we took it down, there was standing water all the way across the yard, right about where that's at, horizontally all the way across. And so that was why we knew we needed to focus on drainage here. And I have a tendency to kind of go overkill with stuff. So after we got started with the drainage, and that's at the top of the backyard, that's kind of to prevent some of the water from coming in the yard, because the water's coming off the adjacent property. So it's like a big ditch there. The ditch was sufficient for a long time, and then I got tired of going out every year and clearing the ditch. So I just took more of the Easy Flow and and threw it down the ditch. So I don't have to worry about if the ditch gets stuff in it. I know there's still a void there for the water. And that runs down to a culvert that's on the far end. Yeah, this dry well, originally the idea was that maybe that would be sufficient. We didn't consider is underneath the dry well is just clay. Just like most places in the South, and the clay is like watertight basically. So the water has nowhere to go. There's a lot more water coming in a good rain than we have space in the dry well, even though it's like 8 feet deep. That we put a sump in there, like a sump pump, and it pumps. There's a pipe you can see there on the fence. Pumps down the pipe and into a large drainage pipe. It's like an 18-inch wide corrugated pipe that's buried in the backyard, goes across the way, and like go around to the end of the neighborhood to a retention pond. So that gets the water out via the sump pump, and it works great as long as the sump pump's running. See in here, right here is this is what happens when you put a sump. I put the sump pump in the dry well, and just like NDS kind of recommends, and covered the dry well over, read it all, didn't think nothing else of it. It was running fine, but then one day the sump pump just dies, and so had to crack it open it up, and I'm in the process of like dry well sump pump surgery here. Oh yeah, and to make matters worse, you see on the side here is like some irrigation going on. The water main that feeds the irrigation had a slow leak over there for a long time. I didn't realize it until it just broke clean finally, and so that was like just filling up the dry well. And that's what ultimately killed the sump pump. Just burned it up because there was so much water just constantly going in there. I didn't notice it. So that's that story. Sorry.
No, that's a great. No, seriously, I always enjoy talking to folks, and this is good. It's kind of like this full circle part, right? Where Matt mentioned, people that are in the beginning of that lawn care journey or near the beginning, and people that are related to or know very well, particularly golf course superintendents, right? Because like this group is probably some of the most prideful people in working their way out of whatever situation or just taking like this, like, hey, somebody's backyard, like, you know what, like, yeah, we could just sit here and push all this, shitty dirt around and throw some sod over top of it. But you know what, we're gonna make it right. We're gonna do this and do that and add all these layers of, you could call it complexity, but at the same time, it's removing, right, or mitigating risk, down the road of, again, water always standing in your backyard, right, or things of that nature. So kudos to your grandpa, kudos to you for letting him take the wheel and show you around the neighborhood a little bit when it comes to the turf. That's good. I know I'm going to enjoy the rest of this now, having seen this. So
you brought up one
Go
key
ahead.
part about where the water goes out. Originally, just kind of because I think it's like more typical, we're going to send the water out the front yard, just with like I forget what you call it, but like a curb hole, basically. Just have the water go straight out.
Curb cut. Yep.
Well, yeah. So we're in the middle of doing that, and I even like made the curb puncture penetration myself. In the middle of doing that, and then the HOA comes by and they're like, "No, we're not okay with that. We don't want you to run any of the water from the backyard that's coming off." They have a lawsuit against the guy in the adjacent property. It turns out I didn't know anything about it. We don't want you to put any of his water into our road. That's very important. So then I had to come up with that solution with the 18-inch pipe and all that stuff in the backyard. It goes down to the end of the road into the retention pond.
That's
so it just got more
hardcore.
complicated. Yeah.
But you solved it, right? And a lot of times people just throw in the towel and be like, screw it, whatever. And then, it's a freaking bird bath in their backyard every time that, it rains. Or you can go out there and, take a leak in the backyard and it'd probably puddle up if you hadn't done anything the right way. So kudos to you on that one. I'm interested. Go, J Pink, if you can go back to that soil test. So you mentioned chicken poop, and again, take all these numbers and divide them in half for you folks scoring at home to get your parts per million here. And I don't know if it says.
So this soil test is for the front.
Okay. Oh, this is the front. Okay. Now, did you do anything to the front, Nick? Like soil wise?
Yeah.
Okay.
Soil
So
wise,
it's the same everywhere.
Poop, just a thinner layer. Yeah.
Thinner layer of poop in the front. Good deal.
Yeah.
Good to know it. Okay.
Let me throw this out here.
Ryan, who?
Go.
Before we kind of jump into this, it's now I'm being brought back. I was just listening to a show the other day. What is Dave Wilbur's handle? The
Turfgrass zealot.
The turfgrass zealot, Dave Wilbur. Okay, he did a show the other day that we did not need another turfgrass expert. And it was a facetious approach to how when he came out of college, how ill prepared he was for all the different facets of turfgrass management. Right, like that. You didn't pick up from ag mathematics, that you didn't pick up from ag economics, or whatever the case may be. And a lot of that would even fall into the category of construction, right? And how versed you have to be at construction in order to be a golf course superintendent, whether that's designing drainage or designing an irrigation system. And so, I bring that up to say that we came into this purely from the agronomic perspective. We may be starting at an entry level. However, on the other aspect of agronomy, right, which is managing the conditions in which your turf is growing, we're obviously starting at a very advanced stage because of the type of drainage and effort and even soil swapping that has gone on here is not for the faint of heart. And it took a lot of time, dedication, hard work. And it's very clear that a significant amount of experience went into that as well. So, yeah, kudos to you for putting that level of effort into that, because most people just don't have that piece of it alone. But clearly you do.
I do got to throw this in here because it ties right in with that. I was talking to my grandfather about it earlier today. So we worked he would work on courses when I was younger, and he always took jobs where I could be there with him. So I spent many a day on the back of the fairway mower while he's running the mower down the fairway, cutting the grass day in, day out. And it's like if it was raining, I was stuck in his office reading Toro catalogs. I just spent a lot of time with him when I was younger. He raised me. I should have thrown that in there to begin with. On those earlier courses, they were bigger. There's a lot more going on. Like he would say, would renovate half the course at a time, right? In those situations, he'd bring in other companies to do the irrigation. If there's drainage problem, there's somebody specialized in drainage. Even sometime for some of the equipment stuff, if it was too much to manage in house, they'd have somebody come in and pick it up, take it, fix it, and bring it back. There's all these other external options, right? What really kind of blew me away is after doing that like that for 20 years of my life, he was even doing it for a while before I was born. But me watching him do it for 20 years, when I was about 20, a little younger, I guess maybe a little younger, 17, he took a different kind of job where he built not a full size course, but literally started with uncleared land, took down the trees, the whole 9 yards, to build a par 3, and then all those things. The budget was real tight, so then all those things that in the past I've seen him kind of contract out, we did it all between ourselves, us and 4 other guys. It was very impressive to me to all those things that I thought were maybe too detailed or more technical for him. He had either already knew or picked up those things along the way enough to where we went to this other place and we pulled it off and everything came together. We went from having trees and no golf course to having a golf course within 12 months. It kind of blew me away. That's one thing you were talking about. Those other skills, those other things you pick up on the course that you have to deal with. Even stuff like maintaining the equipment and stuff has come up lately for me. And I talked to him about it. He knows all about it. And I'm like, where'd you learn that? I was like, do you learn that in turf school? Because he went to Horry Georgetown Tech for some kind of turf degree. And he's like, no, we didn't talk about lawnmowers in turf school as far as how to backlap them and take care of them. So I was like, where'd you learn it? He's like, well, we just read about it, and you got to do it. You got to take care of yourself. You don't want to continue to have to pay other people for it. Just learn it. So, wow.
No lie.
I call that
is
it's dormant badassness. That's what I call it, because you just sit there and you learn, and then someday somebody hands you a piece of land, bulldozer, and says, hey, build this golf course, and you just erupt with badassness, right? You just that's just the way it goes, and that's the kind of people. And I'm only in this industry. It's the only industry I've ever been in my life. I don't know of other ones that are like that, where you just have to learn it, and then compress it and just do it sometimes, right? And not use help or not, but he had resources though. That's the thing. I think the most successful people in industry, and not to get too far off topic here, but in even on the homeowner side or the DIYer side, is the group, the core group that's watching this right now, or that we interact with, for the most part, has built a good network of resources, right? In which to, hey, maybe you're not going to do it for me, but you've done it a time or two, or maybe a dozen times or 100 times. And I'm just going to ask you about it. I'm going to pick your brain as long as you'll let me pick your brain and get a whole bunch of information, and then go try and do it myself so I can learn it, right? And I think that's the nice thing about our industry, is that there ain't no secrets. The people that think they have secrets and are gatekeepers and things like that, man, those aren't real. Those people are fake as hell. They're just fake as hell. And so you got to watch out for those folks. But the other side that you didn't mention on the golf side that I always found interesting, and I didn't think about it till you just said it, right? Because you didn't say it, and then I thought about it. That didn't make any sense at all. But the people management. So like in golf, and Matt would tell you this, and Ray would tell you this, the hardest thing, you got all these things, all these variables you can't take care of, handle, whatever. You got to have contractors come in and help you, or you need resources to back you up. You still got to manage your staff, right? You got to train them, you got to teach them, you got to coach them, you got to manage expectations. Well, people be like, well, hey, I don't have a staff at home, right? Well, maybe you have your kids and you got to manage them and they're helping you out. Or you have a spouse that you have to manage expectations to. Those are your members, like you're working at a country club, right? And that's more work than it is, setting up and doing all the shit you got to do on the lawn. Sometimes it's just managing their expectations and catering to their whims, but you got to do it, right? And you learn how to maneuver and handle all those politics of something that somebody doesn't necessarily care about, but they know it means a lot to you, and you've got to just, find your way. And so, I don't know, it's just interesting how you had that upbringing. I don't know. I just have a lot of appreciation, a lot of respect for somebody who saw it externally and didn't go into it, kept themselves, removed enough to stay out of it and go a different direction. And God bless you for doing IT and not choosing this as a career path, because it's a tough road to hoe sometimes, but it's an interesting proposition. So, Ray, what do you think? You kind of had sort of that relationship, right, with your grandfather, and I don't know about so much on turf exclusively, but wasn't there some kind of connection there for you?
Actually, my grandfather was a farmer and basically a trailblazer for Hawaii, because he basically showed me a different way for land management that I never thought possible. I mean, my grandfather was the original Terminator, basically, because
Have you seen this
for
boy?
example, yeah. Well, actually, grandfather was the type where, watch this will be dead tomorrow. Mark my words. And sure enough, you know, he, he was true to his word. Stuff would die, and it would make a big impression on me, because not only would it die, it would also stay dead for up to a year. And this was back in the 1980s that I saw this. So he was getting this done before we got into the golden age of all of this modern science and chemistry. So he had kind of an influence on me, and I'm grateful to it, because I know the old stuff. I also know the new stuff. And a lot of times I'm looking back and thinking, my goodness, if grandfather saw some of the modern things that I have to work with, it would be grandfather that would be, having a stroke. He'd be the one having the stroke.
So there have definitely been some
Legitimately.
things that I've taken from the Discord discussions. I've taken them back to my grandfather to ask him about it, and it's totally floored him. Just because it's different than what he learned. I mean, I guess it goes to figure that, like, just like any other field of study or science, things evolve, right? But we're talking about overseeding, and we had always overseeded with an annual rye, specifically because it would die off on its own. And somebody in the Discord, it's been a little while now, was talking about perennial rye or overseeding with perennial rye and then spraying it away, when it warms back up. And I asked him about the perennial rye, and he's like, "Oh no, that'd be the worst thing. You'll never get that out of the Bermuda. It'll ruin you. It'll ruin you." And then I basically I was trying to explain to him that I learned about these products on the Discord, and there's stuff you can select out. It'll kill it, and make room for the Bermuda to come back out in the spring. No problem. He's like, "I've never seen it like that. I didn't know." So there's definitely a lot of stuff that's changed. It does floor him, like you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. But at the same time, I think what it is that I bring with me I guess, some of the old mentality, Nick. I bring some of the old mentality with me, and that's where people, they work with me, they know me, and they tell me they've never seen anybody approach this kind of work the way I do, because I'm essentially a throwback to the 1970s and the 1980s for all intents and purposes.
A lot of stuff was better
Doc didn't
back
go
then,
to Woodstock. He was growing grass. He was too busy growing grass to do Woodstock.
He was actually
Much less-
Magnum PI's technical advisor on how to get laid in Hawaii. Tom Selleck learned everything he knew from Ray.
I
Tom's
do gotta
not the
say
only
this,
one. I'll
Ray.
fight him over it.
There's been more than once when I was about to apply something to the lawn that was probably not going to go well. I didn't realize was not going to go well, and I've just put it out there in the Discord just to put it out there and wait, an hour to see if anybody has anything to say about it. More than once, Ray has kept me from killing the lawn. That's happened. I thought the first time I thought, wow, that was really really good. He helped me out there. It's happened like 3 times at least. I was about to spray something that probably wasn't going to go over well, and Ray's been like, no, you shouldn't do it because like this. And again, I mean, it always makes sense when he explains it, but it's stuff that I didn't even consider. So I really appreciate that, Ray. Thank you.
Oh, I mean, I'm just trying to keep people from doing some of the things that I've done. You see,
No doubt.
No,
Me too.
Here's a learning experience. Is in the 1990s, I remember frying some lawns, and you know why I remember frying them? The next month, I was out there with a flat shovel scraping up all the dead grass so that the lawn can be resodded.
I'll say this.
Wish you had a
My
phrase mower.
grandparents have a story. Oh, yeah. My grandparents have a story about one time my grandmother helped my grandfather spray the greens and how a couple of them didn't make it. As before I was born, when they were still younger. But she's never lived it down. They still talk about it today. So that's 40 years ago or something.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Well, let's
go ahead.
Going back to your soil test here, let's take a look at this. And your number one issue with your lawn right now, what is it?
Oh, I don't. That's. I guess I should have thought about that question. Really, if I had to nail down a number one issue right now, I can't find a decent mower at the price range that I'm looking for. That's I know that's not really what you're talking about, agronomics probably, but I guess mowing is kind of, I don't know. But these weeds in the backyard seem to be particularly bad this year, and it's never been great back there. Well, when my grandfather was managing it, there were no weeds in the backyard. He kept the thing cut real short. We had a crappy greens mower. He made it work anyway. I don't know how he did it. and he didn't even spray that much herbicide, and there weren't very many weeds back there. But he got sick and was like in a place for a while, and then now he's like living a mile away. Comes over every day, gives a lot of advice, but he's not physically like out there applying stuff. He's just not healthy enough to do that. And so I'm trying to handle it, and I'm obviously not doing as good with it as he used to do. I will say this too: I let it go for a couple of years, like actually more like 3 years. Like after he moved out, I was kind of overwhelmed with it, and I literally just like cut it. I don't know, maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches high, and didn't apply hardly anything. And I don't have time for that. I was working a lot too. So it's kind of coming back from that. So I guess I'm trying to bring it back to what it was before. I know this after it starts growing, like it grows real good, and so there are a lot of bare spots in places where I know like at the end of the summer last year it was covering most of that. So I'm pretty sure this year it'll cover most of that again. I've had some issues recovering from poana in the front yard. Had like real bad poana. Probably oversprayed some mazaquin there too much. Something kept the grass from coming out of dormancy at its like it normally would. Basically, I compare it to a couple of common Bermuda lawns that are in the neighborhood, and I was about a month behind them. So it was either too much imazaquin. I know I overapplied pendimethalin as well. I got to work on applying just what's directed by the label some, but slow coming out of dormancy. There's some spots you can see from all the poana that died off. In the backyard, I mean, I pulled an enormous quantity of dandelions. Just literally just went out there and pulled them up one at a time, like 2 wheelbarrowfuls. I didn't even know there could be that many back there. And so there's a lot of stuff like places where the Bermuda is not growing, either it's growing thinly or not at all, and going on is just there was that much weeds that are dying off or dead. Yeah, right here on the right, in this picture on the right hand side, you can see where it's like really patchy. Those were like just nothing but dandelions right in there. Right, matter of fact, the dandelions for some reason grow right over where the drain is actually underground. So I don't know if there's a correlation or if that's just maybe the dandelion seeds flow down there from the runoff as the water's coming down. I don't know, but they grow right in there real bad. Back there in the back corner, there's a pretty bare patch. There used to be like a dog kennel and stuff back there. The dog died like a year and a half ago, so that's not really a thing. It's grown over, I'll say, 75% of the space that was totally bare from the kennel and the dog and stuff has already grown over with grass last year. So I'm hoping that this year maybe I'll get the rest of that space grown in. If it keeps growing like it was, I will. Yeah, I guess just those the spots from the weeds, and see it's a little gray still. It's like still a little brown, almost like there's still. I mean, there is still some dormant grass going on. I guess maybe I'm impatient. I want it to come, to be green like it is when it's growing full speed. But I'm sure that'll probably just happen with time. But I want an idea what to apply when. That I guess that's and that was what I reached out to you, Matt, for originally. Basically, I just want an idea of I mean, I know just based on what little I don't know, the potassium and the phosphorus on the lawn have been at the levels they are on that soil test for 6 years now, ever since we put down the crap dirt. And I never put down anything with P or K in it. Like I only use fertilizers that are big number 00. So if it's up to me, left to my own devices, I'm putting down like 30 something 00, like 2 pounds a month, maybe even a pound and a half every 2 weeks, something like that.
Damn.
And I know I've learned on the Discord like that's too much nitrogen, right? So I need to figure out like maybe if I can come up with just the outline of a plan of how much nitrogen when, so I don't put too much down. That'd be good. There's some pictures we hadn't got to yet that are some centipede grass that really drives me crazy, where it's like encroaching from the adjacent lawn. And I'd really like some advice on that too.
Gosh, Ray's gonna just want to murder this stuff, right, Ray?
Pretty
I
much.
can hear you sharpening your knife.
Yep. Because your soil test actually doesn't look that bad. I mean, it nutrient-wise, you're pretty good. And the only thing that I would tell you at this point is I remember having a conversation with you about fertilizers that are high in chlorides to disadvantage the centipede. I'm gonna take it up a notch. And I'm even gonna suggest that you deliberately salt the soil a little bit for the centipede. And when I say deliberately salt it, I'm thinking like 5 pounds of salt per 1,000 square foot where the centipede is particularly aggressive.
Wow.
That's bananas.
Like
That
sodium
is-
chloride
that's
salt?
crazy.
Sodium chloride. Exactly. And
Gentlemen, just
what
take a
will,
moment to revere that we have just entered a new threshold where we are spreading sodium chloride as a matter of centipede control. So we have reached that point. Thank you, Ray. Continue.
It's IPM.
no, and the reason why I'm going there is because I heard that you had Tifgrand, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, sir.
Okay. I also know what Tifgrand will do if you hit it with high rates or repeated applications of quinclorac. Because if somebody has, say, zoysia grass or a non-hybrid Bermuda, I normally tell them to start hitting the centipede contamination in their lawn with a combination of 2,4-D ester and quinclorac and keep doing it until the centipede turns black and dies. But that's not an option for you because if you do hit your Tifgrand with that quinclorac, you're probably going to stress the Tifgrand as much as or more than you're going to stress the centipede. So I'm kind of thinking what causes the least amount of harm to the Tifgrand. And in fact, here in Hawaii, I know that Tifgrand doesn't get bothered by a little bit of saltwater intrusion or salt spray coming off of the ocean. It'll put up with it. It'll take it. It'll probably take it a lot better than hammering it with quinclorac.
We got a little
I just wanna
seashore
know-
paspalum experiment going here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to know when we're going to start seeing people. Now that you said that, Ray, I'm counting down the hours until people are selling seasoned salt on lawn YouTube to try and take out centipede.
What about Himalayan
use
pink
regular
salt?
Morton's.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, just your regular sea salt's not going to get it done. You're going to have to do that
Dead
Himalayan
sea
or
salt?
smoked salt.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the salt.
Yeah.
Now, what about kosher salt? Would that be? That
Oh,
have any
yeah.
impact? Is
I
kosher-
don't. Yeah. we'll
Kosher
have to do
salt
a
would probably
trial.
be pretty good. Pretty good. However, getting serious here, your other option on centipede grass is one that's very expensive, but I know it works. Revolver herbicide. And the reason why I don't like to talk about Revolver is because that stuff is about $300 a quart.
I was going to say Monument, and Monument is going to fall into that same category there of, a $300 to $500 cost per acquisition.
Let me go here. So, I did purchase the Monument. Haven't used it. Basically, after I read about it, I was kind of scared to put it out. So,
Oh yeah.
so I got the monument box sitting there. I figured if nothing else, because I did buy a ton of perennial and annual rye to try to overseed with, I thought I could use the monument if nothing right away next year.
Yeah.
So the monument's still there. Hadn't used any of it. I read about another alternative that seemed like less risky, maybe, and I bought that stuff too, but I haven't used it either. It's MSMA to kill the centipede in Bermuda. That was just from reading other forums, but I haven't used it. But I got 2.5 gallons.
This is what
Educate me.
happens. This is what happens on the internet. Everybody was thinking about how to go about that gingerly, Nick. All right, so MSMA was banned from the turf market. I guess it's been about a decade now that it lost its label, right? So legally, they still manufacture it because of its use on right-of-ways, some applications for golf, and of course, agriculture is still used as a burn-down product in ag. And what you'll find people that get relatively feverish about it, myself included, because as MSMA is perpetuated as a solution, unfortunately, if there's ever an opportunity that herbicide comes back to the market, it gets eliminated through very public misuse of the product, right? And so a lot of times, the thing that just absolutely drives me bananas is seeing how many people are so publicly outspoken about intentionally using this product, because what happens is that it then paints the picture back on the lawn care people that we don't know what we're doing, right? Because the most basic of rudimentary ideas when you get into the industry that is beat into your head over and over and over is the label's the law, right? And when you see a blatant disregard, which, I get it. I'm not, some big fan of big government that should tell me what to do and all this fun stuff. That's 100% not who I am. But I try to operate within the confines that are bestowed upon me, because because it's actually easy to do. MSMA was a great product when it was out to do the things you needed it to do, because at the time that was all we had. Well, over the last decade, there's been pretty significant improvements on the forefront, especially of sulfonylurea herbicides that are now available to us, that they are exceeding what MSMA used to be able to do for us, right? And so where I get my ass chapped and my panties in a wad over it is that it still manages to be circulated on these online forums. And truly, it's not, I get it. It's a homeowner, it's your property. You do what you want to do. But unfortunately, the people who end up having to pay the penance for other people using that product, it gets passed down to the lawn care operators. The guys who are out there doing this for a living are the ones that end up getting punished over these types of things. And you can look at examples of imidacloprid, right? And what's coming down the pipeline with that. Misuse of imidacloprid. And who takes the brunt of it? It's not ag, where so much of it was reported. It made its way back to lawn care. It's kind of the same thing with glyphosate, right? I'm not even going to argue that glyphosate was misused. However, a lot of the lawn care distributors, those products are no longer being distributed to lawn care guys who need to use that product in order to generate income. And so, unfortunately, I'm going to tell you right now that the MSMA, in my opinion, is off the table. You've got Monument. Monument may intimidate you because of the low rate, but in reality, it's probably one of the safest products you can use because of that low rate. The LD50 on that product makes it pretty much non-toxic if you're even remotely close within the limits of the law, right? So, pound for pound, the amount of material it takes of something like Monument is so small. It is so small what is required is that it's very difficult to leave a lingering effect on the environment, right? So when it comes to controlling, and especially what you have described here in the diversity of the weed population you face, I've heard everything from broadleaf weeds, multiple different types of broadleaf weeds. I even heard you mention, what was the other one you said there on the show? Before the show, we were talking about, I just read a comment that said, yeah, somebody said, he said MDMA, not MSMA. That's funny. I couldn't help but laugh at that. And of course, it's Brandon Falk too, my chemistry buddy there. So, it's in this particular instance, Monument is going to be way more of an effective product because the spectrum of control, right? You can apply one product that is going to eliminate the vast majority of those weeds and do so very efficiently. And also, it requires so little of the product for you to get that control that when it comes to environmental management or environmental risk, that is on the lowest end of the spectrum of the products that you could be going out with, right? And then also, too, it frees you up from having to harbor that, keep it secret and wonder, is it doing this? Is it doing that? Because here's the thing: when I'll say the phrase "burn and return," and I'm going to use this for a plug here. You listen to this, J Pink. I got this. We're going to bring it all full circle. But MSMA was really the foundation of what I call kind of the last generation of lawn care, which was burn and return, right? MSMA is monosodium methanarsenate, right? So it is a salt in effect, and you are salting the plant to death. Except you are salting plants that Bermuda is oftentimes so tolerant of the salt that it will recover from the damage that occurs from the MSMA, right? And so, in effect, you are literally salting everything out, smoking it down to the ground, burning it, and then allowing the Bermuda to come in and take the place of what was there. And unfortunately, in order for MSMA to work, to really have long-term control out of it, to actually get a kill rather than just remove the leaves off the weed, it required multiple applications on a very tight time schedule. And so it would be a 6-week, 8-week type of thing where you lose the aesthetic value of your grass, right? And if you're in the transition zone where your grass is only green for 6 months, 8 months out of the year, well, you just lost a month and a half of it to being completely smoked out and roasted, right? Versus being able to use something like Monument, which may slow growth but not offer all that much discoloration, and you get a broader spectrum of weed control out of it. It just makes more sense to go with that product than the other one. The cost per acquisition is higher, but really when it comes down to dollars and cents on your actual application cost, it's not too wildly different. And it keeps you in a bit of a safe space there. So I would highly recommend you disregard the MSMA, throw it up on eBay, pawn it off on some farmer of the sort, and work around that base of trifloxysulfate Monument, right? And so kind of, back to what you were talking about, Monument is broad spectrum. It's going to control broadleaf weeds. It's going to control grassy weeds. It's not the most effective broadleaf weed control, but it is a pretty damn good start. And it's something that if you need that extra kick, say it's a little bit cool outside when you're making your application, you need that extra kick, then you can add a bit of something that is a little bit cheap, like a 3-way or something. You can mix 3-way with Monument, broaden your spectrum control even wider, and get a more effective one application, complete and total kill of everything you're targeting there. Also, nutsedge being a big one, Monument is one of the most effective herbicides in controlling nutsedge, not just in a short-term capacity, but also in a long-term capacity, right? Where if you time your application correctly, it can provide you almost season-long control of nutsedge out of a single application. So
I think I got all the nutsedge with the Imaziquin. I will say that.
With who?
Imaziquin. It's like
Yeah.
Image. You
yeah,
actually,
that's right. Image. Yeah.
you lay down image, okay, and here's going back. Matt talks about burn and return with MSMA. My experience with MSMA is that it was actually a lousy, inferior product to apply unless it is tank mixed with more systemic and residual products. Because when I used it back, 1990s, it was Image, MSMA, Simazine, and something called Banvel, also known as dicamba. And that was just to ensure that if I was going to make a lawn look brown, the only thing that grew back after I was done was, in fact, the zoysia or the Bermuda. So, it's basically, it's a lousy product, and I don't really miss it in most cases. And to speak to Matt's point, you get more mileage out of doing something like, say, Monument. And at my time of the year, when I'm spraying Monument frequently goes in with something like Speed Zone, which is 2,4-D ester, MCPP ester, and dicamba, and something called carfentrazone, which basically makes it so that Monument, which is normally a very slow-acting herbicide taking 2 to 3 weeks to show effect, if you apply it that way, you start to see your weeds burn down within 5 days. You actually see it working. And
I've got a
that gives you
sulfentrazone.
you got sulfentrazone. Sulfentrazone plus Monument. That's my favorite application for going after things like nutsedge. And if I need to make my, say, Speed Zone even hotter than it already is, then it's sulfentrazone, Speed Zone, and Monument all in one.
Okay.
And
but just to be clear,
yes,
were y'all saying the Mazaquin should go in the same box with the MSMA? Like it's something I should avoid as well? Or is it okay?
No, it's okay. It's just that with imezaquin, you avoid applying it during transition of the grass. And in fact, I don't want to see it done within 2 months of the grass breaking dormancy. Because let me explain something to you about imezaquin. Imezaquin is actually a very slow-acting, highly residual, soil-based herbicide. It is not a fast-acting, burn and return type of a product. In other words, you lay it down, it works slowly, and it just keeps on going, and that may or may not be to your detriment, depending on when you've done it. Like, for example, if you do it a few weeks before your grass is supposed to come out of transition in the spring, you're not going to do well, because what I know about imezaquin on Bermuda is that Bermuda is severely growth regulated by an imezaquin application.
I think I did that. That's probably exactly what happened.
Okay. But because I'm okay with using imezaquin for late spring, early summer nutsedge control, I love it for that, because that gets me through summer without dealing with too much nutsedge. I have no issues with it. But as something to control POA in the winter or the, right before transition, I'd rethink that a little.
Yeah, I guess I'm learning now. But I've used it in years past, but later in the after the grass was already come out 100%. And actually, I had I was I was out of the yard for a while. Like I had a surgery coming up or whatever. I knew I wasn't going to be in the yard, so I thought I was getting a jump on it. And I'd go ahead and put it down. I mean, the grass was still dormant at the time. The Poana was growing good, but the Bermuda wasn't growing.
Right.
So I went ahead and put it down, and I definitely think it slowed it coming out.
And it will. It definitely will. I have seen that, and I've caused that to happen so many times. I've done it to zoysia grass. I've done it to Bermuda grass. It's a common, easy thing to do. As a bit of a general rule of thumb, if the POA is growing aggressively, like where you can see it's really starting to take off, your Bermuda underneath is really starting to wake up as well. And so you have to be careful with the herbicide you select, because if your POA is really going hard, your Bermuda is really starting to wake up. So you have to choose an herbicide that is not going to be overly that cause bigger issues for the Bermuda as it's breaking dormancy. Here's the thing. Pretty much whatever you decide to put on Bermuda in transition is risky as hell. There's no way around that. That's just kind of the name of the game. It would be easier, better on the front end to go with something like glyphosate and get it out of the way, and take it out with glyphosate.
I'll say this: my grandfather told me the glyphosate. He kept telling me about this technique, applying the glyphosate with a sponge, and how I should just take my time and do it. That for me, the idea of Roundup on the grass, I was like, nah, I can't do that. It might, burn up all the Bermuda. I probably should have gone that route.
Yeah, and even you can apply it to partially greened up Bermuda. So there's a study out of NC State that was done specifically about applying glyphosate to partially greened up Bermuda and how it influenced the green up of Bermuda. And it did. It slowed it hair, but there was no lasting damage that occurred from it if you stayed within the rates they recommended. And the rates they tested were from 8 ounce per acre all the way to 32 ounces per acre. So a relatively low rate, but did not cause any extreme damage to the Bermuda grass long term. So it's always an option, especially if it's, I know in our area here, in February, we're going to start to get those days where you're like, oh boy, spring's right around the corner. It's going to be 70 degrees. It's going to be 80 degrees. And the Bermuda has not woken up yet by any stretch of means of the imagination. And you still got multiple frosts ahead of you that's going to keep it from really coming out. But in a time like that, I mean, it's a perfect day to get out there and make your application, a blanket application of glyphosate. Especially if you're going to mix it with like a 3-way herbicide, like a Speed Zone or something like that. It's a perfect 1-2 combo that you can get out there, make your application. You're going to get everything under control. You can put your pre-emergent down in the same tank with it and just be done. One app done, and you're pretty much, riding a good, 60, 80, 90-day period of a generally clean lawn from that over that time period. You can't do it with zoysia grass. You can't do it with Centipede. You can't do it with St. Augustine. You can't do it with cool season lawns, but you can do it with Bermuda.
Anything that you can't do with Centipede that you can do with Bermuda right now, that's for me.
So back to that, with the weed pressure you have right now, it would not mean anything to me if you blanket sprayed that backyard with, here's your corn speedwell. Look at this. So for me, this is a blanket application. Go ahead, hit the Centipede with it as well of Monument and Sulfentrazone. Run those 2 products. Go ahead, blanket the entirety of the product. You do already have your pre-emergent down, correct?
Oh yeah, yes sir.
Okay.
There's been methylene out there for like 3 years worth. Yeah.
So you're good to go ahead and make that application, and it'll be a one and done. And go ahead and tell me the situation that you were talking about earlier where you made an application and then this happened.
So I didn't want fertilizer. I was like, wait, before you put any fertilizer down. I was struggling with the dandelions and various other weeds, but not speedwell. And I put down, Scott has a granular product that's the herbicide portion of the weed and feed. So it's got the same ingredient, same percentage as weed and feed, but without the nitrogen. And I put that down. And a lot of the weeds, that, and I sprayed the Mazaquin. I'd sprayed the Mazaquin while the grass was still totally dormant, which I know now probably shouldn't have done that. When the grass was just starting to get a little bit green, I put side out from the weed and feed part without the nitrogen. And you can see like all the other weeds that aren't speedwell. I don't know if there's some other pictures of the backyard. You can see they're like curling up and they're really roached out. Like they're really like dying. But when that's a great example right there. When those other ones started dying, the speedwell just popped up out of nowhere. And I even went back and sprayed. I forget the real name of it, but it's like a four-way herbicide product. Comes in like a bottle at like Lowe's and Home Depot. I might should go look that up. But it had 2,4-D in it, dicamba, a couple other things I can get that ingredients. But I sprayed that as well. And the speedwell not impacted by it at all. I was spraying it to take out the speedwell, I thought, but the stuff didn't even. I mean, it's not even laying down; like it's still standing up and hadn't changed color. And the product I sprayed claims to like kill some outrageous number of weeds. Like a bunch of them are different speedwells. So I thought I would be good there, but it did not work out. I think it's weed stop, Spectricide weed stop.
Speedwell in general has kind of reached that phase where we are that amine based herbicides are no longer going to kill it. They're just not. And so I used to run into this problem when I first got into lawn care. It would be the most frustrating thing that I could go out and make a blanket application of a three-way, a Let's Go three-way or whatever, and come back and the only thing that was in the property was corn speedwell. And through process of elimination, what I found was that I could actually I used to carry something called MCPA ester on my truck, and it was an ester-based formulation, and I could get out there and spray MCPA ester and it would take care of it. Well, from there, I started experimenting with other ester-based formulations and then found that for all intents and purposes, ester-based formulations tended to work exceptionally well on corn speedwell. Amine formulations did not. So going back to what you have at hand here, and particular things that you may want to acquire, here's the thing: is that when you made that application of the weed stop, it likely had this was likely already up. It had not reached or broken the canopy yet. And so you made that application, it eliminated everything else. And with that elimination of competition, it gave opportunity for the speedwell to mature and flourish, right? So now back to this, I think your better bet moving forward would be either going out with something like your Monument and sulfentrazone. That would be a great 1-2 combo there. You're going to get more of that foliar burn down effect from the sulfentrazone, while the systemic activity, the root, the movement of the herbicide from the tip to the root from the Monument to take hold there. So you do get a nice quick burn down and a long-term root kill of this particular weed with that combination. Speed Zone in this instance would work pretty well on the corn speedwell, but it's not going to do much for your Centipede there. Yeah, what you got?
So the like kill-all product that I used had like 2,4-D in it, quinclorac, dicamba, and sulfentrazone. So I thought surely it'll get it, right? But it didn't.
No,
Is
not gonna.
It didn't. Yeah, it definitely didn't. Is Speedwell listed on the Monument product? Like, is it one of the listed things that it'll target, or is it just something I should know it'll get even though it's not targeted, or even though it's not listed. I mean, basically, I've been Googling and even going to sites like Do My Own, and they like have this label search where you can search what's in the labels, and just trying to pull up products that list speedwell. And because I already had the monument, if it had come up, I would have been like, wow, but it did never come up in my search. I think sulfentrazone then, that's why I bought the sulfentrazone. Any idea on that?
On because let me just scan the label real fast for you, because how many applications of 2,4-D based products have you made to the lawn already?
That's one thing. I'm pretty sure I was over my limit, because the kill-all product said, at most twice a year. So I got the portion from the kill-all product in one app, but I also got 2,4-D in the herbicide portion, the herbicide product from the Scott's. I should probably look that product up. I can tell you exactly what's in it. I know 2,4-D was listed on there.
Because I see something called corn speedwell in the monument label.
And that is exactly what's growing there.
That's what I got. Yeah, for sure.
Yep. Because I'm also familiar with a product that I used to rely on a lot here in Hawaii before I got into a more comprehensive pre-emergent program, and that product was Power Zone. Are you familiar with that product, Matt, Ryan?
Power Zone? No, I've never heard of Power Zone.
Okay.
It showed up in an NC State study for Cornwell that I read. Good.
Okay. Power Zone is MCPA, MCPP, and dicamba and carfentrazone, and that can be the third application after an applicator has already gone through their 2 annual applications of 2,4-D. And I essentially used to use it back in the day because I think up until 2000, Hawaii basically severely restricted 2,4-D based weed controls, but MCPA was unrestricted. So guess what I did? I ran the Power Zone.
I think you're past the statute of limitations there, so you're good.
Hey, Ryan, turn your mic up. And Matt, what are we looking at here?
So on the first column there, about almost to the third up from the bottom on the far left column, you'll see corn speedwell. This is the monument label. This is at 10 to 15 grams per acre. Here's the thing: is if you're going to make an application to monument, invest in a good scale. Because make sure you're good at your gram conversions here, because if you're only applying 10 to 15 grams per acre, divided by 43.5 is where you are on your grams per thousand, right? So you need a good scale in order to measure that. But and this is what really chaps my ass, is that they used to manufacture monument in these little individual gallon packets, right, where you took the packet and you dumped it in 1 gallon and then it was good to go. But they don't make that anymore, and they only have it in the I think most of the packets right now are 5-gram packets, and a 5-gram packet's going to cover a third of an acre. But if you've got 8,000 square feet that you say, maybe you only need 2.5 grams, and that's going to cover you across your entire property there. So an easy thing. Here, there's another one. So you talked about Power Zone there, Ray. I've never used Power Zone. I did use a lot of Tri-Power back in the day when I would run up against my 2,4-D limits. And looking at the label here, it's same thing: MCPA, Mecaprop, and dicamba. And I know MCPA is used a lot as an alternative for it. What are the differences between MCPA and 2,4-D and Mecaprop?
Okay. MCPA is supposedly a lot more selective in a crop called flax. But as far as turf grass is concerned, MCPA and MCPP, unfortunately, is rather harsh on warm season grasses with the exception of zoysia. So I used to get a little bit of burning from that power zone unless I kept that label rate on the lower end rather than going for max rates. And in fact, in most cases, I would prefer that my herbicide formulations keep the amount of MCPP down to a minimum. And that's why, for example, I'm a big fan of Speed Zone because the ratio of 2,4-D to MCPP is such that I don't get more damage than weed control out of it. And oh, by the way, MCPP is the ingredient in 3-way that tends to affect clover more than 2,4-D otherwise would. So that's why it's included in 3-ways.
Yep. I can say from experience running that MCPA ester on Bermuda grass, I've definitely turned some orange. And this is, where I was doing some dumb stuff with it. Like I tell this story lovingly when I first started spraying weeds with the permagreen, and this was with 2,4-D, right? I was so unsure of the spray volume coming out of the nozzle that I would go over the same weed 2 or 3 times, right? In this particular instance, I was actually spraying onions, and it felt so weird to me that I made, a couple 2-3 squirts across it, and boy, did I turn everything orange. I mean, it was a bright, vibrant orange, and it takes me back to when I was backpacking MCPA ester on Bermuda grass for corn speedwell and having that same chemically burn type of orange that I got from it.
Right. It's MCPA ester, like in that power zone formulation. I remember using rates as low as 32 ounces per acre and getting extremely good control over the targeted broadleaf weeds. It didn't take much. And 32 ounces, by the way, is probably as much as the Bermuda grass could deal with without turning too orange or too brown.
So for my situation, is it applicable or not? The power zone.
Yes, it is. It's very applicable because I would even suggest it because here's one more thing. Centipede grass is not tolerant of MCPA at all.
Cool.
So you can see where I'm going with this is
I'm buying it right now.
Yeah, if you want to, disfavor or disadvantage your centipede grass, I'd be out there with the sprayer filled with Monument and Power Zone, for example. I'd be sending it.
Nick, were you
Cool.
was this your attempt at trying to stop the centipede from coming over?
No, well, a couple things. Oh, you're talking about this picture. I just see it now.
Yeah.
So I've like basically, it's kind of like I used an edger, but I actually did it with like this blade on a stick. It's like a manual bed edging implement, and just wedged in there and kind of. The main thing was this. Talking with my grandfather, his approach on the centipede was largely like if we grow healthy enough Bermuda, like it will naturally push out the centipede. I'm like, Grandpa, it's been here for a couple of years now. We're either there's something we need to do with the Bermuda we're not doing, or we need another alternative. And so then I started talking about spraying the Monument on there, and he's like, well, if you do that, the neighbor might get mad. Even if you don't spray it onto the neighbor's yard, via the root system and the runners in the centipede, it could go over as much as 3 feet. The impact of it could go over as far as 3 feet. So then, like I thought on it real hard, and I was like, I got the centipede out of here. So I went down 4 inches deep on the property line and tried to separate the roots. of the centipede. That's what's going on there.
Okay,
do that on
That
both
was
sides,
not
but I
easy.
got-
Start.
My goodness.
No,
That's
no,
a
it took a little bit.
that's a good start, because with stoloniferous grasses, I often suggest that people sever the stolons before trying to do herbicidal control on it, because my goodness, I despise conjoined lawns. I despise them, but that's another day.
I even
But
thought
anyway,
about, and on that note, I thought about would it be cool to run a piece of bed edging through there just to keep it separate? And then
yes, it would.
somebody in the Discord was like, "No, that'll look horrible." I'm like,
No, a
"Well,
lot
what
of
about
people
bricks?
like-
What about like brick?" So I don't know.
If you did a course of pavers, they do that a lot with like Tiffigal teas and different different other types of celebration or something like that out in the rough or second cut. They'll section those off, right, so they can just run a stick edger down either side of that and have that definition. So I wouldn't see any problem with that. Just throw a little bit of gravel in the bottom of it, just so you're not going to freeze, but just so it can float a little bit, right? And yeah, I'd have no problem with that.
This is what
I think
chaps
it's
my
true.
ass about centipede, and it should be eliminated from the face of the planet. Is you've got that centipede right there, and I promise you that in any other situation, if you went over to that neighbor's yard and you stared at it long enough in the wrong way, you could probably burn a dead spot in it with your own eyeballs. However, what creeps in and intermingles with your Bermuda grass right there, in theory, yes, you get your Bermuda dense enough and healthy enough, it should be able to resist it, but it doesn't. For whatever reason, I don't know why. I do not understand it. And it will go there and you can treat it like holy hell, even to the point of probably getting out there and sprinkling sodium chloride on it. When you have to get to that point with the centipede, when it's in a lawn and it's a full monostand of centipede and you can look at it and kill it, versus when it's in your lawn, you've got to bust out the sodium chloride to kill it. It just doesn't make sense to me. I hate that grass more than anything on the face of the planet. Centipede can go to hell.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it a bit.
and by the
and
way,
one thing, just like
centipede will survive and in fact thrive at low heights of cut. And so, Matt, I remember you telling me about your centipede grass nightmares, and a lot of that is related to it not being mowed low enough. Because if it were in fact kept at like 5/8 of an inch or half an inch, that would then become supergrass. So in this case with Nick's, if he starts putting a real mower on this thing over there and starts mowing it down low, you've just ensured its survival. Go figure.
It doesn't make sense. Look, the best centipede was the one you would let grow to 4 inches and then you came in and scalped it 3/4 of an inch or an inch, and you just took off a massive chunk of it at one time. It loved it. That was the absolute happiest centipede you could have in the entire world, is if you just completely neglected it, treated it like dog shit, mowed it as low and violently as you possibly could. Probably if you mowed it with a weed eater, it would thank you for it. I don't know. I do not like centipede.
No, it would. No, it wouldn't, Matt. Because the only time I've seen centipede die is if a string trimmer was involved. But as far as a mower is concerned, you're right. It loved the low cut. It just loved the low cut to death. So
the on the other side, the other side of the yard, there's another picture like this with a similar line. That lady loves the centipede so much, she recently put some sod down on top of centipede that was already there, and she just sodded the centipede last year. So she's like got multiple layers of centipede sod. It's really weird. And on her lawn, like her lawn is so lumpy. I used to mow over to the edge of side of her house, and that you can still see some bare spots. I'm not sure if I have a picture of them, but there's still bare spots there because the lawn's so lumpy. Like when I'm just mowing it an inch, not even really low, but it's like hitting the lumps in the ground and taking off huge chunks of the centipede grass, and it still hadn't grown back. So in that situation, it's
Is
like
it-
on up
Is it
a little
this?
bit, but Yeah, that's the picture. If you go like to the very top of the picture, you can see some little line, like look like little lines up there, and she's even soldered it over. That's places where I've hit it with a lawnmower when I was cutting her grass for her, just over to that edge of the house, and it never has grown back. So in that situation, I tried to encourage the centipede to grow back in those spaces, put sand out, little fertilizer at times. Normally I stop on the line and don't put any, but over there I was trying to get it to grow. Couldn't do anything with that. Centipede didn't do nothing for me. But in my grass, the centipede grows like wildfire. Cannot get it to go away.
I just can't stand it. Somebody needs to do away with it.
You see, you know what you need to
And
do.
They love it. They love it here. 1 yard at a time. These people are going in, like tearing off they basically, the builder put in common Bermuda, right? Tearing it up and sodding centipede grass. And I'm watching the neighborhood. Like at this point, it's 70-75% centipede lawns. Like these people love the centipede grass, and it's killing me.
It reminds me of Aiken, South Carolina.
We don't have that problem
Hey,
up
My
here
mom's
in
family is from
Canada.
Graniteville. It's right near Aiken.
It makes me sick to my stomach. Look at it. Look at that yellow in the background. Look at that contrast. Is that not hideous?
Yeah.
Hey, baby, I got a great idea. We're going to rip out this damn green grass we got, and we're going to put in something that's a real funny yellow. We call it puke green, and it's nice. It's real nice. And they call it the lazy man's grass. I only have to mow it ever so often. You don't fertilize it. You don't do nothing to it. It's a great idea, baby. I'm going to do it. I'm going to spend $5,000 on it.
I did put out that
It's
10
at
10
that-
10 about array, and it is starting to yellow some. I can see it.
Really?
I just put it out
wherever
on
you
the
put
edge.
down.
Yeah.
Okay, because that is speaking to how sensitive centipede grass is to chlorides. Because the number one mistake I see made to a centipede lawn is you keep on feeding it muriate of potash as its fertilizer, you will get it to decline and die. So, you know that nice mix that we always like to use of either potassium nitrate or potassium sulfate and ammonium sulfate as a fertilizer? Instead of doing that to the centipede, feed it urea and muriate of potash. You're going to kill it with fertilizer. Serious, no joke.
One thing I thought about in that rut that I've cut, that edged line between the yards, if I pack the 10-10-10 in there, the cheap 10-10-10 with the chlorine in it, if I pack it in there, would that be too much? Would that be okay? Would that help? Would it be a waste? I don't know.
That would help.
And then also,
That would help.
if we're talking about sodium chloride, could I put it in there? Put the sodium
Sure
chloride in there
can.
too? I don't know.
Yeah, little bit of kosher. I mean, kosher Himalayan, Mediterranean sea salt, whatever floats your boat, go for it. I mean, because I'm just capitalizing on how touchy and sensitive centipede is to chlorides. I'm just capitalizing on it.
We're talking about putting pavers in there. Maybe I can find pavers made out of like salt licks and just put them in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the kettle salt blocks. Go for it, man.
Yeah, there we go.
If at this point, yeah, I would just, man, I'm telling you, I'd make my application of Power Zone and Monument and just be done with it. It's gonna roast it.
Smoke
It'll
it.
absolutely just it'll be so done, just done. I love this song back there, JP. That's a good one.
The other thing that hung me up on the monument earlier in the year was that I was worried about the grass being like not yet out of dormancy, and it's looking better this week than it has so far. It's really greening up a good bit. But is there any concern around applying the monument to the TIF grand before it's fully out, or is that not a thing? Not a problem.
That's not as bad as imazaquin. It's not as bad. I mean, I've done monument to turf grasses while they're in, their winter non-growth period, and it doesn't hurt them. Of course, I'm very judicious as far as my application rate, where If it says 15 gram per acre, it's no more, no less. And I don't think it's a matter of the herbicide. It's a matter of how are you applying it. And because I know for a fact that a lot of your herbicides do have a 2x safety factor built into them. However, your chance of injury is greatly decreased by staying inside of the label rates. Stay in them.
I definitely like to work on my spraying skills and get to where I can confidently be within the boundary of what's recommended there, not have to rely on the 2x factor. And I think we talked about that briefly before. Are there any tips you can give me on how not to overspray, or not, when I say overspray, I mean how not to apply too much of whatever I am spraying? And I was asking, like, is it okay to just dilute the products twice as much? That's something I haven't done that, but that's something I've often considered.
Okay.
Let's talk about this.
First of all, how have you calibrated your sprayer? Like, what process have you done to calibrate it?
I'm putting the product in the sprayer.
Oh, okay. When I say calibrate, I'm saying how much water per unit area, right? So gallons per acre, gallons per 1,000 square feet, right, is coming out of that sprayer, regardless of what's in there product-wise. Do you know the answer to that question?
I'm sure I'm not doing it right. Let's say that. I'm basically mixing up for 1,000 square feet. I'm mapping out, like, to figure it out. I'm like looking at 1,000 square feet. I mix up enough for 1,000 square feet, and then I try to get a feel for the rate that I need to be applying the product to evenly cover that 1,000 square feet to use up whatever the total volume that I have mixed up. When I'm mixing up just enough for 1,000, and to cover it evenly but use it all. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to kind of get a feel for that and use that to cover the rest of the lawn.
Okay. I probably would tell you to take the opposite approach and do it the other way around, where, say, I fill up my sprayer as I would be using it with just plain water. And I would make some practice runs and say, cover 500 square feet, cover 1,000 square feet, and see how much volume, liquid volume, I'm actually consuming or using to cover that 500 or 1,000 square foot. And I take that and say, I make my practice run, and I can consistently put down, say, a gallon or a gallon and a half of liquid per 1,000 square foot. From that point on, I know that whatever I want to spray onto 1,000 square foot goes into that gallon or gallon and a half of water. And I just follow that. You see, if somebody, say, throws something into a gallon of water and assumes, and by the way, I hate the word assume, because a lot of my elders have told me, when you assume, you make an ass of you and me. So when I don't assume that a gallon is going to cover 1,000 square foot uniformly and in a way that is repeatable time and time again, because everybody walks at a different speed. Everybody's spray equipment is a little different. So what I'm actually looking at is how much water do I need such that I can cover the lawn without running, or I can cover the lawn without walking at a snail's pace, and just cover my area such that it's done without skips. It's done with a uniform liquid wetness, on the grass and on the weeds. And so, speaking to that, I don't assume that because it is too important. Instead, what I do is I take the time to figure it out and test myself. So, yeah, and so that's why when somebody tells me, for example, how, I'm going to put this much stuff in a gallon of water, I then say, okay, tell me now, how much square footage are you covering with that gallon? Do you know? And if you don't know, now's as good a time as any to figure it out. And by the way, for critical applications, something that I myself do is I will make the application in double the amount of water that I need to cover 1,000 square foot. And what I do is that diluted mix is I go across the turf in 2 directions rather than just try to cover it in one pass. So say I'm spraying a gallon per 1,000 square foot. Instead, I formulate my spray in 2 gallons of water, and then I go north, south, then east to west with that spray mix.
Does that
Makes
make
sense.
sense?
Felt like you wanted to add something.
Yeah.
Who, me?
Yeah. You looked very intense there for a minute when Ray was talking. Like you,
No,
you
I
passion.
that's I love I'm a whore for calibrations. I like to make sure it's right. Okay, so let's first talk about the wrong way to do it. Not that what you're doing is wrong, but it ain't right. And it's okay to do it with, like, I don't want to say it's okay to do it. You can get away with doing it with granular products coming out of a spreader like fertilizer. Not the end of the world, right? What's Matt's favorite saying? G for grow, L for lush, right? Yeah. Y for you better find a new job. So when it comes to spraying, okay, first of all, what kind of spray are you using?
I have more than one, but typically any of the stuff that's more sensitive, I'm using the backpack sprayer. It's like a 4-gallon Let's Go backpack sprayer.
And do you have that little brass tip that's like adjustable on there? Is that the spray tip you're using on there right now?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So that's one thing too, is that, we look at not only like what Ray's saying. So we're taking big picture and we're going to shrink it all the way down to right where the water's coming out, right? So that nozzle and the size of droplets and the pattern at which it's spraying out is also critically important depending on the application you're putting out. So I would say that given the way that nozzle adjusts, right, that's a hollow cone nozzle. I'm not sure that I don't know, because I always take that nozzle and just throw it away whenever I get one of those sprayers. I'm not saying you're wrong for using
Me too.
yeah, you can just, that's brass. I mean, that's
Can you
like,
recommend me a replacement nozzle?
Well, we can talk about nozzles. That's a great topic to dive into here in a minute. If my camera dies, don't freak out. I'll keep talking. But so on that tip, let's talk about that real quick, just because other people might be beginners and thinking, oh, I'll use this. There is no way. I'm saying there is no way to get adequate droplet size, right, and uniformity to get to 1 gallon, and most especially 1.5 gallons with that particular nozzle out of a backpack sprayer. Ray, would you agree or disagree with that statement?
I totally agree. And in fact, J Pink, I just posted a picture of my normal setup for when I'm spraying out of a backpack sprayer of some kind using just a single nozzle rather than my multiple nozzle boom. So
This here.
Yep. And what that is an air-inducted flat fan spray tip with a check valve assembly on the nozzle body to keep the liquid from the wand from dripping out or draining out when I've let go of the trigger. And what this does is this throws out a 20-inch wide fan, and the droplets in that fan pattern are relatively uniform. They're not so large that they'll roll off of the weeds, but they're also not so small that they'll drift a couple 100 feet like that video that we had in the after show a couple of weeks ago. I was just sitting there horrified while the spree was drifting. And this is your T-Jet air-inducted fan nozzle. That's what that's called.
So, and here's why. Okay, you asked about a nozzle recommendation. Now, you're going to need to kind of adapt what you have. Probably, I can't think of what the end of that looks like, but adapt it. Now, he's got a quick cap assembly here. Like this is just going to twist on with a little rubber gasket down inside this nozzle. I'm pointing at the screen as if you can see it, even though you can't. That's on me. Don't worry about that.
It's like a quick coupler for a sprinkler.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, very similar, very similar, except
much,
that your male and your female are reversed. Yeah. So, the air inducted nozzle, I think, is if you were going to pick one nozzle and use it, I think it's probably the best all around nozzle for somebody who just doesn't want to sit there and change nozzles out, depending on whether you're spraying foliar or you're spraying soil, soil stuff, and you're changing your volumes and things like that. Like if you were just trying to say, hey, I just want one nozzle that can do, pretty good at everything, an air inducted nozzle. So like a gray air inducted nozzle, which is going to be like a 06 ray, right? 06,
11006,
yeah. So a 11006. Yep. So that's going to give you kind of the best of both worlds of being able to spray probably up to 1.25, maybe 1.5, depending on how slow you walk, and probably at a pretty comfortable pace, being able to spray somewhere between like 0.8 and 1 gallon per thousand pretty comfortably, right? And now the advantage of these are, go ahead.
Actually, you see that that red 11004 AI tip, Ryan?
Mm-hmm.
I get 1.25 gallon per thousand out of that tip per thousand.
What pressure are you running on that bastard?
40 psi.
Wow. Nice.
And so if I want to kind of slow it down and not have to fast march around my lawns, I change that to the dark blue AI 11003. And just
that's small.
Takes me down to a gallon. But what also happens when I'm that small is when I'm fighting with a small leafed weed like prostrate spurge, those smaller, more uniform droplets basically target that prostrate small leafed weed like nothing else. Whereas if I say go out with something bigger like this, like you talked about the 11006, the spray droplets tend to roll. However, however, if I'm dealing with windy conditions, I size up all the way to that 11008 and plan on applying 2.5 gallons per 1,000 square foot per pass. And I can safely operate in up to 10 miles per hour of wind.
Okay, so this is a good segue. I'm trying to find the nozzle chart so I can send it to J Pink and link it. Here we go. Copy that image. J Pink, it's coming to you. Yeah, TJ, we're going to look at the AI. There you go. That's the AIXR. Same thing as the AIC. So let's talk about droplet size real quick. So let's work our way back. Start at the nozzle, and we'll work our way back here on calibration, Nick, if that makes sense, right? So to help you understand the factors that go into why we're choosing a particular carrier volume. By carrier volume, I mean the amount of water that we want to apply over a given area, right? So again, gallons per thousand square feet or gallons per acre. Absolutely.
One question there. So I'm normally like looking at the label, and it's saying this amount of product in 1 gallon or this amount of product in 5 gallons. And I'm like following their instruction on that ratio. Are we saying that there's flexibility there as far as the amount of volume per? Okay.
Yes, because what they're saying is, so let's just say it's 1 to 5, right? They're saying 1 to 5 gallons per 1,000 square feet. And so what they're saying is that the lowest you would want to go, so in the most concentrated form or concentrated mix that you would have in it, don't go lower than 1 gallon of carrier volume per 1,000 square feet. Conversely, if you want to, like what Ray's saying, you got 10-mile-an-hour winds, you're going to spray 2.5 gallons in one pass and double up over it, right? If you want to cut it all the way down to 5 gallons per 1,000, you're fine. Now, there's some products that don't work quite as well when they're that far diluted down, right? Herbicides in particular, right? Because we need leaf coverage, right? And it's very, very difficult to do that when we have high carrier volumes. So going back to this nozzle thing and going back to this droplet size thing, the droplet sizes are characterized by how large or small they are, right? So ranging from a mist all the way up to, a drop of water, like it would drip off your finger, right? And again, it's all about how it reacts with the leaf and the type of chemical that you have in there and what you want it to do. Do you want it to stay on the leaf? Do you want it to roll off the leaf? Do you want it to get down in the soil as quickly as possible? How phytotoxic could it be if it stays on the leaf for a really long time? I mean, there's a number of different variables that you have to account for in that situation. So typically, anything foliar applied, we'd like to have the finest droplets that we possibly can. Now, again, if you're in Ray's world, where Ray, how many calm days do you have a year in Hawaii?
A handful, a literal handful.
I was going to say zero. I was going to say zero.
But yeah, 0 is for all intents and purposes. But the point is that you see something like this AIXR 11002. I once tried making an application with a tip that small. And on my typical, walking speed and whatever, this translates down to a half a gallon of carrier per 1,000 square foot. And guess what I was applying that day?
Can't imagine.
Humic.
Monument, Celsius, and Dismiss.
Oh boy. Yeah.
What color did that turn?
Purple.
Turf State.
Was that orange?
No, Turf State green. Turf State green, man. Turf State green. Turf State green because, again, I'm calibrated, right? And
the
thing is though, I was also doing this on a big, wide open turf grass area with no surrounding desirable vegetation within several hundred feet of that treatment area. So I would do it in that situation, but I wouldn't do it on my typical lawn where I have people's hedges, I have the neighbors' trees and shrubs downwind, because the droplets coming out of that AI 11002 nozzle were small.
Yeah.
Because I know you also see on the internet a lot of people that think the less water you apply per 1,000 square foot, the bigger your manhood is. And
Really?
that's
Is that
all
a thing for real?
Yeah, that's a thing. That's a thing. And supposedly
Man, there ain't nothing more that I
your
love than mixing up a 300-gallon sprayer and covering like 50,000 square feet. And that just feels good.
Me too, because
My fat ass ain't getting off the permagreen, and I don't want to hear it from anybody. I'm doing a quart per 1,000, and that's, hey, get off my guts. That's just what I'm gonna do. I'm proudly to say that I have covered many thousands of acres on multiple of those machines. And why do you think I embrace the burn and return? It's because I can burn the hell out of the grass and I can make it grow just as fast. So, that's what I do right there. I ain't walking no damn yard to save my life. No, thank you.
Who said I
like
always
those fat
walk?
bottoms.
Because
yeah.
Who says I always walk? Because
I don't want to hear about your truck mounted thing that you got going on off the back of your truck that you're going down right of ways and all that fun stuff you got going, Ray. I know what you do over there.
5 gallons per 1,000, Matt, per pass.
Gosh, that's serious. Okay, so
5
getting
gallons
back
per
into
1,000.
the nozzle thing here. If you want to pick just one nozzle, the air inducted nozzle is a good one. But we could do a whole show on nozzle selection. Let's just again, a foliar product, so foliar fertilizers, herbicides, contact fungicides, those would be something that you want to have a finer droplet, because you want that droplet to land and stay on the leaf as much as possible, right? If you're doing a soil applied spray, so if you're spraying pre-emergent, if you're spraying insecticide, if you're spraying humic acid or something like that, you'd want to get that down past the canopy and into the soil, and that's going to require a larger droplet. Now, the reason I say an air inducted nozzle, and gentlemen, you can agree or disagree if you'd like, the way an air inducted nozzle works is it takes in air as the water passes through, and basically inside the center of that droplet, right, is a bubble of air. And the whole point is that the droplet is large as it falls the 20 inches down from your boom and hits the ground. When it hits the ground, it bursts like a water balloon, right? And if we look at, they have these really cool things that are water sensitive paper cards, right? So they're yellow, and when they get contacted with water, they turn blue. I'll see if I can find a nice little slide of that here, J-Pink, so you can throw it up. But in any event, we get the coverage of like a finer tip nozzle with the larger droplets from the air inducted nozzles, without the drift like that Ray is talking about. And then also we get the coverage that we would like to have with a finer tip nozzle. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, where we don't have drift, we can get a larger droplet and still get the volume out there that we want. That's the other thing too, is that we can have a volume range anywhere from half a gallon per 1,000 clear up to 3, 4, 5 gallons per 1,000 if we really wanted to. So it's a very versatile one to choose if you had to just pick one. That's the reason I'm into it.
Yeah.
That was the 11006 we were talking about, or just all of these AIXR nozzles?
All
of these in general. The 06 is probably your best all around, I think, is what you're going to find. 04, 06 is probably where you're going to want to be if you had to pick one.
Okay. And on the pressure,
tell you
so
that
normally,
that's the other thing. Spraying pressure, Nick. I'm gonna guess that, is your backpack hand pumped or is it electric?
hand pump.
Hand pumped. Okay. If it's hand pumped, that's both good and bad. And the reason why it's both good and bad is I can tell you from experience that up to a 110 11006 to a 11008 tip, you can pump a backpack sprayer fast enough to keep the pressure high enough for these tips to work correctly. And back when I was using a backpack sprayer, 30 years ago that was hand pumped, I actually had a pressure gauge fitted between the trigger and the wand that I'd be monitoring as I was making the application, because I wanted to be pumping fast enough to maintain 40 psi through the nozzles. Because most of your manufacturers have designed their nozzles for an optimum spray pattern at 40 psi. You go under the 40 psi, what often happens is that the droplets are no longer as uniform, and the spray pattern itself gets more narrow. So instead of getting that 20 plus inch wide fan, you're now looking at a 16-inch fan. So, pressure is everything. And of course, I can tell you later about my actual sprayer setup where I can literally maintain anywhere from 40 to 100 psi at the nozzles all day long.
Is that a manual pump too?
No, that's engine driven.
It's the damnedest thing you have ever seen.
So on my manual, should I consider like an adjustable pressure regulator of some type? I know I've seen stuff like that you can add on. Would that
If you
help me out?
if you plan on staying with that, but what is the likelihood of you wanting to go electric?
Well, okay, so I was gonna
Because when you start talking about adding pressure regulators and all this stuff, the cost is climbing rapidly where you could just easily make the transition over to electric.
Well, I looked at some electric backpacks, right?
Or even gas.
Well, I did look at one gas backpack too. But the definitely on the electric backpacks, they didn't come with an agitator, and I was like, some of the products that I've looked at on the label, it says it requires an agitator. I really didn't know for sure if that counted, even in a manual pump or not. But the manual pump that I got, I selected because it came with an agitator, basically the thing that stirs the tank when you're pumping, basically inside of it. That and filters. Some of the soluble powder stuff says you want to have filters in place, and it already had filters in place for that. The electrics don't. They don't. At least the ones at Site One, that Site One stocks. Those electric backpacks didn't have filters, and they don't support soluble powders, which I'm not sure how important that is, but that's why I went with the manual. I wanted to get the electric though.
Well, I've known people that have kind of outgrown even their electric backpacks because
Ray,
they want to
this is your
do some
backpack,
rather.
right?
Yes. Yes. And Matt, what did you say about me that I am just extra?
Yes. Yes. Extra is the only way I know how to describe you, because this is so over the top. Even down to the watts regulator with the pressure gauge, the handle, the quick connects, everything here is for function and purpose. Even the choice of sprayers. Yeah, this is so extra, Ray.
Because what so Aldo says about this setup is he says this is 555. And the reason why he says 555 is 5 gallons in the tank, 5,000 square feet covered in 5 minutes.
Ray, how much does that weigh when it's filled up?
I think it weighs about 80 pounds.
Okay. So to put that into perspective, that is Ray weighs about 80 pounds as well. So he is toting his body weight around as he sprays this. I can tell you right now, I'm every bit of 6'4", 250 pounds, and ain't a chance in hell I want to carry that damn monkey around on my back attempting to spray a yard. That's just me, though. That's just me. I don't have that extra that Ray has in his life.
I will say this: I had a 30-gallon pull behind, and it was like I got overwhelmed with the complexity. Like it had like booms on each side, and it was one thing when my grandfather was running it. It was that made it worth having. But then when it came to me operating it, I was like, after messing with it, I gave it away. It was just too complicated at the time, anyway.
Yeah. Well, the what makes this all work is you see this regulator here. When I say 40 psi, I see it on the gauge as I'm applying. And I can make small adjustments up or down, to stay within my gallon per thousand. And there's other applications that I make where I no longer am into 40 psi because for turf grass, I spray as high as 100 psi. I'm spraying at 100.
This is if this is the route you go, this is beyond dedication. Like this, you are adopting a lifestyle. This is a lifestyle purchase. How about that? Ryan, your mic is turned off. Come back in. Start that over.
I said this is some Jason Bourne shit. You're not like the hitman of the asset. Like you are the person that all the hitmen of the assets are trying to kill. Like that's how serious it is.
Is there something maybe less extreme that's instead of having to build it where it's already prepackaged? Anything like that? Y'all throw out there?
It's actually, here's my little gripe or the bitch is that even this backpack sprayer, while as good as it was, not long after I took this picture, I added high pressure jet agitation to the tank.
That's what I ran into. That's exactly what I was looking at with the other backpacks. I would have to add.
Okay.
What wettable powders are you using?
Okay.
I just know that I think the powder thing came up with the monument label. And I was like, well, I need an agitator. And then I was like, how do I get an agitator in these units that don't come with one?
The reason why I needed intense agitation is because I'm frequently applying something like Aliette. Aliette does not want to stay in solution. It wants to fall to the bottom of the tank. So, and I'm also applying a lot of prodiamine. That's another one where that doesn't want to stay, in solution. It wants to fall to the bottom of the tank. So I basically needed a sprayer that would keep everything mixed up and in suspension. And I also do something else where I also am doing a lot of soluble fertilizers. So when I have that 500 psi agitation running, I can literally fill my tank 3/4 full of water and just sprinkle in soluble fertilizers like ammonium sulfate or Peters 2020, and the jet agitation will just mix it up and have it in solution in 5 minutes or less.
I will say, last week we had turf therapy on.
Yes.
And everyone
this is
was
what I
very
was thinking
excited
right
about
here.
this.
And as you're
That would be a good
practicing
one.
developing your walking pace to establish what your rate per 1,000 square feet is out of your tool, and with your walking pace and all that fun stuff, this has a metronome built into it to help you keep time with your steps too, to really help you learn about what your walking pace is, and then you can equate that to what your output is, and then you can equate that to your mix ratios when you make an application.
I need to ask this. Are we saying that the agitator that the label is saying is necessary is not necessary in these smaller volumes?
Yes.
Well, you got to think as you're
Yes.
walking, you're providing pretty significant movement around in that bad boy. You may not be for your first 100 feet that you sprayed or whatever, but as soon as you provide a little bit of space in that bad boy, I mean, it's going to be sloshing all around.
Cool.
Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah. It what that speaks to as far as agitation goes is there's a lot of sprayers out there, like say that 30-gallon pull behind sprayer.
It had an
That
agitator in
I
it.
know for yeah, that needs a good agitator because say you tip in that 5-gram pack of Monument in that tank. How do you ensure that you get a uniform mix that is consistent? In other words, you don't want to tip in that packet of Monument, and when it finally goes into solution is after you've been driving it across the lawn for a couple minutes. You want that to be in solution and ready to go, and that's why you see a lot of guys, they will take the paint mixer that attaches to the drill with the plastic paddles, shove that into the tank opening, and then stir that spray mix, until it's pretty well blended. That's the other thing that could be done.
So I would take an empty container. I always had empty jugs, right? Because I'm out spraying yards. And I would mix, into a half a gallon, right? And shake the absolute crap out of it. Then add that to
Mhm.
the tank would be the easiest way to get that into solution.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
On the pressure part, so like in the past, the more scared I am of overspray or of whatever I'm spraying, like the lower pressure I'm using. But I think I was hearing y'all say that some products, if the pressure's too low, it will hinder its effectiveness.
Okay. What you're getting
More so if you're
into,
not getting the correct volume out, right? The correct amount of diluted material in your tank. If you're not getting that correct amount out, then yes, it is going to. So you can try running a lower pressure, but you've got to understand that's going to affect the overall amount of material you're putting out over a given area. And thus that can hinder the performance. Or if you have a certain type of nozzle that is relying on both an injection of air and your diluted spray mix, you need a certain amount of pressure to make sure that reaction happens in the nozzle for you to have adequate coverage there. So yes, it's best to just feel what's comfortable for you in terms of what your pump speed is as you're pumping and spraying. And that's why it's so important just to test with water until you really feel comfortable. Like, I can do this repeatedly. I can do this, 800 out of 900 times, right? That I know that over this amount of area, over literally this area of land, I can put down this many gallons or this many ounces or whatever it is, and then calibrate off that, and then calibrate your mix ratios off of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Before we go, it's about time to start winding this down, and then we're going to move over to the show after the show. Real quick, okay, let's discuss this first. Let's talk about some fertilizer before we get out of here, because we have not discussed fertilizer yet. We've done a lot about spraying and weed controls. But if you can pull up his soil test one more time, J Pink, we'll take a look at this.
So this
Now,
is the back.
Okay, here we are in the back. All right.
And do you want to compare it to front?
Yeah, we can compare to the front.
It's pretty close.
So, pretty close. We have a little bit more potassium. I would have what I would call sufficient potassium in the front. I'm not like great. I'm not going to stop applying potassium with these levels. 252 pounds an acre is 125 parts per million. 100 parts per million is where I start to hit panic mode. And so I would at least want to maintain 125 parts per million. So I would not be applying a 30-0-0, 36-0-0, 46-0-0, 21-0-0. I would be applying a 20-0-10, a 13-0-6, a 30-0-15 is where I would be going, because for every 2 parts of nitrogen you apply, it's going to require 1 part of potassium to maintain your soil potassium level, right? So basically half as much of what you apply in nitrogen is what the plant is removing from the soil.
Quick
So
question.
if you apply okay, go ahead.
The test from 5 years ago, and this is one thing I wanted to make sure I asked. The test from 5 years ago, same place. The potassium and phosphorus levels they match. And I was wondering I know that those nutrients are supposed to be absorbed by the grass as it grows. Being that I haven't put any down, I'm thinking I'm doing something wrong there, or my grass is not doing something it's supposed to do to absorb the nitrogen and potassium.
Well, the other thing too is soil composition, right? So you talked about the test from 5 years ago was when all the chicken poop was put in.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, I'm not so concerned. I wouldn't think there's going to be a whole ton of potassium coming in there, but definitely phosphorus, definitely calcium. Like you're going to have some high numbers there. So, I think that's going to be pretty stable. Now, plant available, that's a whole other story, and I'm not going to go down that road right now. But I think it's more to do with how your soil is composed, right, and what was blended together to make that soil is more of why you're seeing flatline rates. Doesn't necessarily mean that the tissue levels inside your grass are depleted, low, deficient, anything like that. I think it's more to do with how that soil was put together before they brought it on site.
Okay.
Yeah, to say that if the grass was not using it, it would be in, I don't know. I mean, that would require, there would be something here to point to why that would be the case. I just don't. Yeah, I don't know how that would be possible with the information we have in front of us right here.
I know we've said before that these soil test the scales they give for like low versus excessive, they're not necessarily pertinent to the turf we're growing all the time.
Correct.
But it jumped out at me, in the test. And the first time I got the soil tested, they're like, "Oh, it's excessive. Oh my gosh, it's excessive. I don't know. What should I do?" And then I've learned more since then, just from in the Discord, but also talking to my grandfather. Like, that's not such a big deal. But I did take note of it when I got the test back this time. It's like, look, it's in the excessive range again. How is that staying up there? But okay.
I disagree. I disagree with the excessive assessment because, Matt, true or false, if we go into the pounds per acre to parts per million conversion, this looks more like a 77 part per million phosphorus range. This potassium range is 125, 126, which is not over the top excessive, is it? That's
no,
like
moderate. Yeah, exactly. I would consider that moderate, and I would say you're slightly out of the sufficient range for potassium for my own comfort level. So I would say your phosphorus is sufficient. I would say your potassium is mediocre. Calcium looks normal, right? And is 1,800 parts per million of calcium excessive? Hell no.
No,
Go to Texas.
not at all.
And then you'll see excessive. This is totally normal. Pretty much down the road here, this is you're in either sufficient or the medium range for what I would consider comfortable for me. So the pH is high, and that's why ammonium sulfate as your driving nitrogen source would be ideal for me in tackling this. I would be using ammonium sulfate and sulfate of potash, and just loving every minute of it.
I wouldn't actually. And the reason why,
my grandfather's telling me not to. Yeah.
No, the reason why is because you have that special problem with centipede grass.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right.
So
that's what he says.
And so the thing is that if I want to upset or damage centipede grass, all I have to do is apply urea as my nitrogen source, and the centipede goes into decline. If I really want to make things inhospitable, I add my potassium as muriate of potash, potassium chloride. Because, like, you know that garbage, shitty fertilizer that they sell called 15015? And it's a centipede grass special? Do you know why that is anything but special for centipede?
MOP.
And urea. MOP and urea, and the rest is a limestone filler to take up the remaining space in the bag. So in other words, if you were to even apply that quote-unquote centipede special as your Bermuda fertilizer, I can almost assure you that you're going to fry that centipede, especially if you were to apply that at a half a pound of nitrogen equivalent per month. Because the reason why a lot of people can get away with 15015 on their centipede is they're only applying that one time a year. 1 pound of N application from that crap per year. But then if they try to apply more than that, the chlorides build up and their centipede is dead. But in your case, you want your centipede dead, so throw her down.
Got it. Sounds good. That's one thing between me and my grandfather going back and forth about. So his idea is that the Bermuda would tolerate the higher pH, and because we know the centipede would not, we should keep it around 7.
Actually, Grandpa is right. Grandpa is right, because I would do the same thing if I didn't want centipede. And oh, one more thing. If I didn't want centipede, I'd also be jacking that phosphorus rate up way high as well. If I hated the centipede, I'd be, like I told you in the Discord, I'd go look for a fertilizer that had MAP, urea, and muriate of potash as its base composition, and I'd be throwing that down whenever I wanted to fertilize the tifgrand, because the tifgrand will tolerate it. The centipede will not.
So I would spray to kill out the centipede and then fertilize the Bermuda like I wanted the Bermuda to look, and just not even give a second thought to the centipede would be my approach.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to spray it.
Don't favor
I'm with you on the monument.
Yep. Go for it.
That's why I'd then come in and light it up with that ammonium sulfate and make that sumbitch glow from outer space.
Yeah, I bought like 400 pounds of the AMS with the intention to spread it because of the pH.
Yep.
But then my grandfather's like, hold up. So, yeah.
Spray it, kill the centipede first, then light it up. It'll be beautiful.
Cool.
Do you have any final questions for us before we hop over to the show after the show?
One more real quick. And it's one of the pictures in the deck, but if you don't bring out the picture, it's no big deal. So I always collect the clippings. I don't like the clippings on the grass. Like, I know there are some qualities, some things that can make that desirable, but my preference is no clippings, right? So I accumulate these massive quantities of clippings, and I have these huge grass piles. The only time I can remember seeing grass piles like that were on the golf course, where it's like these ginormous piles of Bermuda grass clippings, and they don't really readily break down. I know that eventually, like 10, 20 years, I've seen them break down. But I mean, in a year or two, they're still sitting right where I put them. Is there anything I can do with that stuff? Is the Bermuda clippings, are they useful for anything? Or is there anything I can do to help them compost more quickly?
Are they in this picture?
You know what you do to get? Yeah.
I've got
Add
some.
some
I
urea
get
to
them.
it.
see the picture up there, yeah.
Yep. Add some urea,
Add
and also, if your
Yeah.
clippings are not decomposing, that kind of tells me that you're a little bit light on the nitrogen in the grass itself. Because ideally, like what I do to my lawns is I don't pick up cuttings. They stay. And that's even on 1/2-inch height of cut turf. But I can assure you that in 2 or 3 weeks, those clippings are gone. You don't see them anymore because they've composted down and formed the organic matter that all of the internet gurus are chasing after for their lawn.
I just want to hit this one thing. So Brandon and Jay Laveau from the Discord, y'all just heard Ray say that I was light on the nitrogen. That would seem to indicate I should apply maybe more nitrogen.
When you say you're
So if
applying
anything, I have
pounds,
not
are you
applied too
saying
much.
are you saying pounds of actual nitrogen, or are you saying pounds of product?
Pounds of actual nitrogen. So I'm using the
boy.
percentages and calculating up how much is going down. So, I mean, 2 pounds every 2 weeks or 1.5 pounds every week, something like that.
That seems kind of a lot, or almost as if because what I'm going to tell you is for that much nitrogen, how much growth are you getting out of the grass? Because something's
Well, it's
not
coming out of dormancy finally. I was having trouble getting it to wake up at all. But maybe I should. I definitely
okay.
got feedback
Oh,
from the
so
Discord that I
you're
should
just
back
saying
off.
you've just been doing that right now to try and get it out of dormancy,
Yeah.
or is that what you've been doing
Yeah.
every year up until now?
No. Just this year. I just this year hit it up
Okay.
a lot.
Okay. So that is you trying to push it out after the amaziquin. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Perfect sense.
Okay,
So
now that makes some sense.
yeah, because I was like, holy hell, what is going on here? But now,
Oh, Lord.
now I got it. Now I got it.
Mm-hmm.
So
because
yeah,
normally
you're good. You can start to back that down now too, I would say.
Okay.
a lot,
Yeah,
a lot.
I don't know. I personally,
Because-
I would keep going until it starts to look like it is 100% recovered. Because that amaziquin is hard on the grass. It is really hard on it in transition.
I'll say this:
No,
there are
imagine-
some, and we saw it in some of the pictures. There are some like bad spots where it's regrowing from the poana and dandelions that have taken out. I was wanting to see if I could get it to fill those in.
Okay,
Apply
maybe that's
NPK
unrealistic.
instead of just slamming it with nitrogen only. I'm telling you, a little bit of NPK would be just it works so much faster for you going about it that
Like
way.
Peters?
Especially, yeah, Peters would be a great one.
or you can go into the
Equalizer by Ryan Knorr.
or even a cheap 111 from the department store or hardware store, because that is like Matt's secret weapon for making grass grow. And by the way, that's also my secret weapon for making grass grow is good old 10-10-10, or in my case I got it as 16, 15, 15, and grass not growing right there. 111. Yeah, 111, and it is not a gimmick. Yeah, or else if
So
you're feeling if you're feeling real good, get that bag of stuff and spray it
Is that a
down.
kilo?
And
Got a kilo of 111 there.
It's
Yep.
about 4 kilos.
there you go.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
happened
that's
up on unintentionally SAMP and 10 plus from Subvert. Are either of those applicable?
So micronutrients and salicylic acid, yes, it is, but not during. You need actual NP and K right now. That is going to be sprinkles on top of the cake, right? So that's what's going to give you your decorative view, or give you some options there as you're moving into like real heat and stress, right? Especially with the salicylic acid product. But for right now, stick to NP and K. And then as we start getting ready to trick it out, as things are grown in and you got recovery going, then that's where you can start to filter those in to the program. And like I'll give you an example. You know, you've got some stuff coming up with like 4th of July, right? You're gonna have a big party for 4th of July, and you're looking for that just maxed out, peaked out color. That's where you can go out with something like SAMP would make a great application there. Or
that's like instead of an iron supplement, like where I'd normally use iron, I would use the SAMP.
Yes, because it's going to have a much more diverse micronutrient complex than just a liquid iron would. You're kind of targeting all the micronutrients there that play a role in photosynthesis and chlorophyll production. In chlorophyll production, and that's why you're going to get such a stronger color response out of it than just iron alone.
Cool.
Yeah, because when you want color in grass, you're not only looking at just iron, you're looking at manganese, you're looking at magnesium, you're looking at sulfur, copper, zinc, molybdenum, and a little bit of boron, because here's my real pisser offer. When I hear these people talk about iron, you know, make it black, and they're not paying any attention to what else the grass needs to get that nice color that they're after. They think, I'll put on enough iron to the point where the grass barely tolerates it, where 1 more ounce of iron and that grass actually turns black and then brown. And by the way, Nick, there's a couple of times where I mixed an iron sulfate solution so hot that as I was packing up my sprayer, the grass first turned black right before my eyes, and then it turned brown. I instantly killed it. Don't
That's a
be
good
me.
Thursday.
Don't be me. I don't do that anymore, but I remember 20-something years ago, I did it once or twice.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, you know, remember now, NPK and water and sunlight and adequate temperatures are what make your grass grow. All of the iron and the supplements are what give it that little extra color above and beyond what NPK and K can do. It's only a supplement.
And I know if you've been a little bit like we have right now, we've been going through these weird kind of cold snaps where, you know, we've got this you know, where it's been like nice, everything's starting to zoom, and then, you know, like this morning here it was 43 degrees, right?
Exactly.
And it just it keeps the Bermuda still wigged out. You know, I'm watching it right here every day in my backyard. So that is kind of working against you right now. But certainly now that we're mid-May, we're on the horizon of having those temperatures where all of a sudden it should really, really start kicking into overdrive, and then you can start filtering the other things to have a little fun with it and find that color spectrum that you're looking for.
Cool. Yeah, I planted a bunch of azaleas, gardenias, camellias. Like I follow like Jim Putnam stuff. And they've been jacked up too. That and some weird rose stuff has been, because it's been cold and hot and cold and hot. It's been real weird with that.
Plants
Yeah,
hate
the
that.
weather's been yeah.
Plants hate that because with I know gardenias, they want it to get hot and stay that way, because all of this bipolar weather will even make it so that maybe those gardenias won't bloom this year. And I've even seen it here in Hawaii, where I have one of these years where winter doesn't come out of winter and it gets, nice and warm and tropical. Guess what? The gardenias don't bloom that year. Try again next year.
I tell you, I hit them with the citric acid, like at the roots, and they bloomed right out. But then we got that cold snap yesterday, and like the blooms are already browning out. It's weird.
Pick a couple and put them under your car seat. It's my favorite thing to do with gardenias.
Okay.
It smells awesome.
Yeah, they smell great for sure. Man, y'all covered a ton of stuff. I really appreciate it.
Well, we're just getting started because we're going to move on to the show after the show. Real quick, before everybody goes, we are going to be starting a podcast called The Burn and Return, and you can check it out. You can search The Grass Factor on any of your favorite podcast mediums, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. Search The Grass Factor. You're going to find it there. If you want to hear repeats of this particular show, it is going to be up. We are now doing that regularly where we're uploading these as podcasts. Thank you, Jay Pink, for all your help, good sir. So like the show with Robert Palmer is already up, and then before that with Longstress, and before that with Ryan Knorr. You can go there, hear all those, and interact that way unobstructed for that as well. If you would like to hang out for the show after the show, you have to become a member of the channel, and you will see a link to join the Discord. And then over in the Discord, you are going to see a channel called Dirty Deeds, and the show after the show link will be there for 10 minutes and 10 minutes only. And then once it's deleted, it is gone into the ethosphere, and it will never be seen again. There are no replays, no recopies, nothing else left of the show. Once it is gone, it is gone forever. All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you on the next one.